We're attempting to avoid that. All right, we're started, so we're on Avoiding Confusion, lesson number 2. All right, lesson number 2, and it should be point number 1 is where we are. And so the answer is up on the flat screen right now. We've been speaking about the existence of God. That's what lesson number 2 is about. Does God exist? We saw the last time that he absolutely exists. And what we're going to be looking at in the rest of lesson number 2 are the ways that he has revealed himself. And so we're going to look at number 1 today, number 2 next week. As I was studying it, I felt like it was going to go long, but then you guys were short with prayer requests, and so you're going to get out early. Maybe. Depends on questions and how much I get into preaching. And so, of course, the first way that God has revealed himself to mankind, we see as inner revelation. All right, revelation is just the word revealing. Okay, so we're not talking about the book of Revelation. We're talking about, and we're not talking about a revelation. Oh, look, I had an idea. This is the way he has revealed himself, and he's revealed himself to every single human being on the inside. Okay? Every human being knows that there is a God. Go to the letter number A. Go to the next slide, please. Letter number A is innate truth. Right? That's what we're talking about. Innate truth means it's just true. I mean, you can't struggle with it. You can't fight with it. Thank you. You can't argue with it. There's not 2 or 3 different truths. This is the innate truth. All right, here it is. Romans chapter 1, verse 19. This should be in your handout. Romans chapter 1, verse number 19. The Holy Spirit, through Paul in the Scriptures, tells us, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them. For God hath showed it unto them. The them there is all of mankind. And so God has shown himself to all of mankind. You've heard this before. Everybody is searching for a something to fill the hole that's in their chest, in their heart. Right? There's a God-sized hole in every single person's chest, and we try to fill it. Now, people try to fill it with themselves. They try to fill it with the world. They try to fill it with religion. They try to fill it with drugs, alcohol, pornography, just everything that's out there, video games, movies, TV, mom's basement, careers. They'll try to fill it with a career. They'll overwork themselves. They'll focus so much on that because they're trying to fill a void. And every single person has that. When you find Christ, you know what you find? You find peace. You find the filling for that hole. But every single human being has that desire and is looking for something. Now, what they don't realize is they're looking for God, or they do realize it and they reject it. So there's an innate truth out there that we're all trying to fill that hole with God, with something that takes the place of God. And God built the knowledge of himself in every single one of us. Again, going along those lines, if you think about other religions, think about other cultures. In the Far East, how many gods do they have? If you go to the country of India, how many gods do they have? You go to China, you go to Japan, you go to Mongolia, you go to all of those areas, Vietnam, you go to Korea, you go to the Philippines. How many gods do they have? Well, they have so many that they just start putting out little posts or little idols saying the unknown one. Right? Paul ran into that in Greece. He's on Mars Hill, and he's walking up Mars Hill, and he says, I see that you're too superstitious, and that's the Greek word behind that is too religious. And I see all of your idols going up around this road that goes up Mars Hill, and it goes around the hill. That's how they get up to the top. And lining that walkway are idols on either side. And as he's walking up to it, he sees the one to the unknown God. And he said, let me tell you about him. So they have a God for everything. And just in case they miss one, right, they put to the unknown one because they don't want to miss one. Right here in our country, Native Americans worship nature. When we were down in Mexico, we ran into the native Mexicans, the Indian tribes. We specifically were with the Tarumal, with that tribe. And they had a little altar room, and in it they would have twigs and leaves and fruit and rocks. And it almost looks like my grandchild's bedroom. They just, collect things. Ooh, I like this leaf. Ooh, this is a pretty rock. Ooh, And they'll take it and they'll put it in this room, and it's so that they can worship the gods of nature. They would worship the sun and the earth and the trees and the animals and the bugs. And we're going to look at some verses that even talk about that. But there's this desire for something bigger than us. And that's inside of every single human being. Not one person is born an atheist. Did you hear that? Not one person is born atheist. You have to decide that you're not going to believe in God. And by the way, I don't believe there's a true atheist out there. You might deny God, that you're getting into agnosticism. But to truly believe that there is no God, I do not believe that there's one person on planet Earth that doesn't believe that there's something bigger than them. They believe in something. And so no one is born an atheist, but you have to decide to do that. You have to, well, it's a decision. But how does that decision come about? Have any of you ever been hurt by a Christian? Have any of you had a bad experience in a church? Never in this church. No. Listen to me. No. Never in this church. Never. But no, have we ever had bad experiences in church? And sometimes they get so bad that it drives us away from church. Right? Let me throw this in there. We've talked about this in the past, I think when we were doing the series on forgiveness. If something happens in a church, somebody says something, somebody does something, and it stops your faith in God because of an action of a human being, then your faith was misplaced. It was not in God. Your faith was in man. And since man hurt you, then you said, oh, well, God doesn't love me. No. We assign things to God that God didn't have anything to do with. And so causes. Somebody made you angry, somebody hurt you, somebody said something in a church, and it drove you away from church, and you say, well, I don't believe God exists now. Or if there's all this wickedness in the world, then, how can God be there? We kind of get to that. But then my question always back to them is, how much of God have you let in your life? Right? We say there's so much evil in the world, but if everybody applied God, then how much evil would there be in the world? Right? I always use the analogy, how much soap is in the supermarket? Right? Isn't there a whole aisle on soap? And if you walk down it, there's soap with moisturizer, there's soap with aloe, there's soap with aloe vera, there's soap with skin moisteners, there's there's just soap, there's borax. You guys remember borax? That's acidic soap. You've got liquid soap, you've got bar soap, you've got cream soap, right? You got grainy soap, you got smooth soap, you got green soap, you got green and white soap, you got white soap, you got pink soap, you got tan soap, right? You got blue soap. So you go down the aisle and there's all this soap. If there's so much soap in the world, how come there's so many dirty people in the world?
Because only clean people buy soap.
Soap has to be applied.
Exactly.
Soap has to be applied. So why is there so much wickedness in the world? Because God needs to be applied. Right? And so somebody that says, well, there's so much wickedness in the world, how could God exist? Well, you got to apply them. And so these are some ways that people will reject God, and they'll say, I'm an atheist, or I'm an agnostic, or, I want to believe, but I don't believe. All right, the next slide, please, Jordan. Letter B. So there's the innate truth, and then we have a unique intellect. Human beings have a unique intellect. Do you know that you can think more thoughts than a dog can? Do you know that? You know what a dog thinks? Where's my master? Right? And as soon as he sees the master, he's wagging his tail. Right? And then if you listen to the commercials, bacon. Right? Bacon, 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 bacon. You watch the other reels, squirrel. Right? The movie Up, squirrel. This unique intellect that you and I have that has been built into us, given to us by God. Think about this. Let's go back to the very beginning, all right? In Genesis chapter 1 in verse 26, God says, and this should be in your handout. You can follow along in the scriptures if you like, but in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, God said, let us make man in our image, right? After our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created us in whose image? His image. Now, do you think God is smarter than a dog? Well, if you think God is smarter than a dog and we're created in God's image, then we are smarter than a dog. Right? Some of us aren't as smart as a box of hair, but I was just trying to see if I could get you to liven up just a little bit. But if we're created in God's image and God gave his intellect to Adam in the garden, right? And that's the biblical use of the word if. Since God did that, God's not going to create a little robotic automaton and throw it in the garden with no knowledge and said, hope you make it. He gave Adam the mastery of the human tongue, of the language. Right? He gave Adam on day one the knowledge on how to tend every single plant, every single fruit tree, how to take care of every single animal, how to take care of every single bug. But not only that, if we look in verse number 19, it says, and out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. How many animals can you name? You know, I tried to do this, and I tried to start with A, and I only got like 3 A's. All right, there's 4. Aardvark, that's the one I had, because that's AA, right? That's like the first one on the list. But you go down and you try to name them all, right? And then you go to a B, and then you go to C, okay? And you can't just say cat, because how many different cats are there? So the Lord brought, by the way, I'm being facetious there, because he brought kinds by Adam. So he brought the cat kind, and Adam named him. But Adam had the intellect that as the animal passed him, he said, boom, here's your name. 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 How many of you guys have a hard time thinking of a password? Between 8 and 16 characters, and you have to have a capital letter in there and small case letter, and you have to have a symbol and a number. Right? How long do you sit there and struggle on your password? How about 4 numbers? Come up with a pin. Right? And by the way, your password can't be the same as the last 3 passwords that you've had. All right? And then you get locked out, and tomorrow you get to try again. Right? See how much we struggle with something so simple as a password? Here's what I've done. Here, suggest a strong one for me. I've started taking those. I don't even think about a password anymore. I'm like, I can't waste all my brain energy on a password. Click, take that one. So it's a little N, a big Y, the semicolon, and then a 2, and then the, a M, and then a big O, and then a, and then I have to cut and paste it so that I have it copied so that when I sign in, then my browser can say, oh, okay, there's your password. I'll remember that for you. And how many of you have to do the forgot password thing? All right, so you see where I'm going here. I don't believe that the human beings in today's time are near as intelligent as Adam and Eve were. And we tend to look back and say, well, they weren't that smart because they lived in a garden, right? And they wore fig leaves or they wore animal skins. Well, how long do you read in the scriptures until there's a city built?
Like 2 chapters.
Right? What city did Cain go to? Anybody remember? Is it Nod or no? The land of Nod. And there's a city in there. They already built city. I mean, so we think of Adam and Eve as cave people, living under the open stars and everything. But really soon, we also have Tubal Cain, who works with brass. And then we have a relative of his that makes all kinds of musical instruments. I mean, invent invent the piano. Right? Be the person that invented the piano. Well, that happened way back in early days of Genesis. And so how smart is humankind? How many animals named animals? Right? How many animals have you ever heard of that spoke?
The donkey and snake.
I've heard of 2. Right? Can you think of any others? So the serpent in the garden, Balaam's donkey, Mr. Ed, but turns out in 1950 we had AI.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I had to say it.
Right?
That was good.
You're using me.
And so, I mean, and so I'm just making a point here. How intelligent are animals? Well, not that. Not as intelligent as we are. Right? So we have this intellect that God had given to us, and it's unique to humankind. I don't know if this is in your handout or not, but the different kinds of intellect that we have a moral intellect. Right?
Yeah.
How many of you know right from wrong? How many of you know that shooting somebody in the face is wrong?
I'm 10 and I know that.
Okay? How many of you wish that shooting somebody in the face was not wrong? Right? So we all basically have a moral compass. We know things that are right and wrong. We know that we can't just walk up to somebody and punch them in the face and knock them out. Right? We know that you can't go up to somebody and take something that belongs to them and make it yours. You know, you can't go into a store and just take things off the shelves and walk out. There's this moral intellect. We know what's right and wrong. However, what we do is we carterize it. Look with me at Romans chapter 1 and verse 21. Here's ways that we can do that. Romans chapter 1 and verse 21, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. How is it people can just walk up to people and just shoot them? Because their foolish heart is darkened. How is it people can, especially young people, go up to behind somebody and just punch them in the back of the head? It's because their foolish hearts were darkened. How is it people can walk into Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart or whatever and walk out with baskets full of stuff that they don't pay for? Because their foolish heart is darkened. And it all comes back to rejecting the existence of God. You know, if these people realized that there was a God, wouldn't they live in a little bit of fear that maybe he was going to get me? Right? I have that fear as the pastor. I have that fear. I try not to do things that are wrong because God does get me. And I've already mentioned this before. I can't lie. I can't. If I try to lie to my wife, I get busted. And it's like immediate judgment. Right? I'll say something like, she'll say, where'd that $10 go? And I'll say, well, yeah, must be in another pair of pants or something. Right? And then she'll go look in that other pair of pants, and there's the receipt for the the coffee that I bought and the Cinnabon that I went out and got. Right? And then I'll get busted that fast. She'll say, where were you? And I'll say, well, I was off, I was coming home from work or something. And then the friend that I was hanging out with, calls me up and says, hey, you remember when we were hanging out, 2 minutes ago? And, my phone's loud enough for her to be able to hear. And she's like, where were you? So I've just gotten into the habit of just not lying to her. The only time that I can lie to her and get away with it is if we're doing something for her from the church. Right? It's Pastor's Wife Appreciation Month, and I'm running the whole shebang. Man, I can lie to her face in a heartbeat, and she'll never know.
And that's okay.
But that's the only thing I can ever get away with. Because the Lord just, says, well, so my at least in that aspect, I don't have a foolish, darkened heart. I know exactly, right? Exactly what God's going to do in that case. And we're talking about this moral compass. In Romans chapter 2, verses 14 and 15, it tells us that that the world knows that there's a law even though they're not Jewish and they've never read the Mosaic Law. Right? Romans chapter 2, verses 14 and 15, for when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things that are contained in the law, these having not the law, are a law unto themselves. Do you see what he's saying here? You didn't get, the Gentiles, you didn't get the law from Moses. God didn't write them with his own fingers to give to the Gentiles. But the thing that's contained in the law, I've put in every man's heart. That you're going to do what I told the Jews and I told Moses, you're going to do it because that's your nature. You're going to have a moral compass. Verse 15, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, and their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. And so he's just telling us that everybody has this moral compass. That we all know it's, even those ones with the darkened heart, they know they're doing something wrong. Right? The reason why they know is because when the police show up, what do? They scatter. Right? Well, here comes the law, boom. 5-0's coming. They know what they're doing is wrong. Somebody confronts them, like, of course I worked at Lowe's. An employee would confront somebody, hey, are you going to pay for that stuff? And they'll drop their backpack and run out the door. Because they know what they're doing is wrong. Or they're stuffing it in their backpack. They'll grab something and they'll carry it until they get to the certain part of the store that they think is in the back and hidden. And then they'll stuff it somewhere because they know that what they're doing is wrong. And that's what this is talking about. He goes on and he says this. Are you guys familiar with Richard Dawkins? Are you guys familiar with that name? He's the paraplegic that was in a wheelchair and like super intelligent, but he was an atheist.
Stephen Hawking?
Oh, that's Stephen Hawking. No, who is Richard Dawkins? I thought that was Richard. It's really close. But he's another atheist. He's an atheist. And in order for you to be a real live atheist, okay, you have to say that there is no God. And if there's no God, there's no good. And if there's no good, there's no evil. You have to get to that place. If you're a real atheist. And so that's why I say there's nobody on planet Earth that can be an atheist, because they know things that are right and wrong. They say, this taco tastes good. Right? They know the difference between a good taco and a bad taco. Right? By the way, the bad kind is the fish kind that was heated up in a microwave.
Oh, God.
That's a bad kind.
Yeah.
Okay? Or you found it at the gas station on the day-old shelf. Here's what Richard Dawkins said. He says, the problem for atheists is severe enough that some actually do deny the reality of evil. For instance, Richard Dawkins, who calls belief in God a delusion, also denies the existence of evil. He wrote, the universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. When you look at the world, is that what you see?
No.
What do you see when you look at the world? Design? I mean, how many of you like colors?
Yeah.
Right?
Beautiful.
Flowers? Is that a pitiful indifference?
No.
You ladies, when you walk by flowers, I know my wife does this, you walk by flowers, what do you always do?
Smell 'em. 'Cause they
You
smell
walk
good.
by and you got to smell them,
Yeah.
right? And what's that saying? You got to stop and smell the roses, right? So we have a unique intellect. We have a moral intellect. We also have a moral purpose. And I think I'm going to finish with this one. Yes. We have a moral purpose. Right? How many of you like living? Right? How many of you, when you go into a body of water, you swim? Because you want to stay on top of the water. How many of you like breathing air? Right? How many of you, when you go to the hospital, you want to feel better when you walk out? Right? We go there for a reason, do we not? So that we can continue living. Now, having said that, the hospital's no place to get better.
No. You want out as fast
Right?
as
The couple of times I've been in there the last several years, every 2 hours or something, the nurse is coming in, checking my blood sugar, checking my heart, checking my breathing, checking my blood sugar, giving me new drugs. Oh, we have to take blood from you. I just got to the place when I was laying in the hospital bed, I got to the place where I could lay comfortably with my arm out, but it had to be the arm with the wristband so that they could scan it.
right.
I need to scan your wristband. I need to take blood. We like living, don't we? And we take measures to keep ourselves alive.
Yeah.
Right? We take medicines
Go to the doctor.
that help us. We take vitamins, supplements that help us. Right? We do this because the Lord put into us the desire to live. We have a purpose. Listen to this. The first question posed in the Westminster Catechism covered an important topic. So Westminster would be in England, Catechism, so that's the Anglican Church. Here's the first question on there in the Catechism. What is the chief end of man? So what's the whole purpose for a man to be around, alive? Their answer is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Right? Solomon said it like this. Nope, I'm not going to get it. He said it, we're to honor God, we're to glorify God, we're to love mercy. That's in Micah. To do justly. What does it say in Ecclesiastes? The whole duty of a man is to fear God and keep His commandments. I think we're going to look at that. We are. That's why I'm trying to remember it. In Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 13 to 14. Right? I knew that was in there for a reason. But we're going to get to that in a second. But we have people walking around trying to deny God. Romans chapter 1, verses 22 and 23, they profess themselves to be wise. They became fools. and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into the image of like unto corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. We were talking about those Far Eastern religions, right? They've got some creepy things that they worship. I think in India, they have Siva. It's some woman with 6 arms. You know, that's creepy. Have you ever got slapped, guys, by a woman with just one hand? Could you imagine all 6 of them? Right? There's just all kinds of stuff. And then I mentioned nature worshipers. You know, I'm not for the willful destruction of nature, but I don't think that you punish somebody for riding on a cactus more than you punish somebody for killing somebody. Exactly. Right? And I don't believe that they're equal crimes. No. I think that if you push a cactus down that's on your property, that's your property. You shouldn't be able to have the city or the county come after you because you pushed down a beloved, cactus. We're worshiping nature more than we are God, and then placing more importance on a cactus than we are on a human being. By the way, you can't deface a saguaro cactus, but you can murder a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfectly
right?
fine.
They see no problem with that. I've seen on the news several times, we're looking for so-and-so that inscribed their names on a saguaro cactus over in, off of Golf Links or whatever, down Speedway or something. But how many times do you hear reported that, 300 babies were aborted today on the news? Do you see how we've kind of got that backwards? And so that's what happens in Romans chapter 1. When we reject God and we're unthankful and our foolish hearts are darkened, we become fools and we become stupid. And nature is more important than humans. By the way, who did God give dominion over all of those things? We read the verse. To Adam, did he not? Thou shalt have dominion over the whole earth. Right? Let's look at Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and then we'll be done. Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verses 13 and 14. What's the purpose of man? Here's the purpose of man. And Solomon, being the wisest man that lived, and by the way, I think he lost his wisdom for a while, but I think he got it back. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 13 and 14. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment and every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. What's the whole duty of man? Fear God and keep his commandments. And if you didn't get that, you read the rest of that verse, for this is the whole duty of man. Right? It's almost like he says twice, pay attention, here it is. Right? We're to glorify God, that's fearing him. We're to glorify him, give him the praise that he's due, worship him. Understand that if we mess up, he's going to get us. Right? That's Solomon's perspective. Fear God and keep his commandments. You come into the New Testament, and what do we hear? If you love me,
Keep my commandments.
keep my commandments. Right? If you love me, keep my commandments. And so we have this purpose that God has given to us. And that purpose is to live, and as we're living, to glorify him. All of that has to do with internal revelation, inner revelation. You know what we're going to be looking at next week? Outside revelation. Right? Outside revelation, external revelation. And so we'll pick that up next week, and we'll see. Now we'll be looking at some externals. So all of that was internal. Human beings have the truth that God exists built into them. And in order for you to reject that, you have to on purpose, willfully reject the existence of God. There's that inner revelation. And then, like I said, next week we'll look at external revelation.